Hi, my name is Chad Strauss with Microsoft. I'd like to spend a few minutes and provide a demonstration of Viva Amplify. Before I start with the demonstration, let me share a little bit of information about what Viva Amplify is. Amplify is designed to help address some challenges that corporate communicators face on a regular basis. Primarily, how can we easily create communication just a single time and then publish it universally out to multiple endpoints? And then second, how can we measure the effectiveness of that communication? In other words, how is it that my employees are engaging with the content so that I can improve upon it next time? Amplify is really designed to be used by corporate communication teams, but really it can be used by any organization or any group that is trying to reach a large number of people. That could include individuals like folks in leadership or even functional roles. There are many Amplify use cases. The example that I'm going to use in my demonstration is an employee newsletter, but Amplify can be used to create communication for product launches, product updates, providing information about change management or trip reports. So there's really a large volume of scenarios in which Viva Amplify can be used. So what I'm going to walk through is a demonstration of how you can create what we call a campaign in Viva Amplify, how you can manage and plan and orchestrate an entire set of communication from beginning to end. I'm going to show how and where you create and design the communication, and then how you can publish it out to multiple endpoints at the same time. And then at the end, we'll take a look at some of the reporting so we can measure the effectiveness of Viva Amplify. So with that, let's jump into a demonstration. This is my Viva Amplify landing page. It's just a getting started page that provides some links of information about how to manage or create a campaign, how to actually author and publish the content, and then how to view the reports and the engagement at the end. But what we want to start with is by clicking on campaigns at the top. The campaigns page provides us kind of an overview of all of the existing campaigns that are currently active and those that are in a draft mode. You can see I've got a number of campaigns that are currently live. I've got one particular campaign that is still being written. And all of these campaigns also provide a quick overview of engagement. So you can see here, this particular campaign has already been seen by a handful of people, and a number of people have also engaged with it. But what we want to do is create a new campaign. And a campaign is really kind of a container or a structure in which we can hold a number of additional pieces of communication, whether they be newsletters or status updates. So I'm going to create a new campaign. We do provide a couple of out-of-the-box, or rather one out-of-the-box scenario, including some pre-built campaigns. If you create a blank campaign, you'll be starting from scratch. I'm actually going to choose the one here called the Copilot Deployment Kit. This is a good one to get started with. Even if you're not rolling out Copilot in the organization, it gives you some ideas of how you can create some of these communications. There's also one about talking about using Viva for AI transformation in the organization, but we're going to select this one. And the first thing I need to do is give it a campaign name and maybe a description. I'm just going to go ahead and leave the pre-filled values in there. And as I click next, I need to define who in my organization is going to work on this campaign with me. I'm logged on as a user named Megan. She's the owner of the campaign. But I've got some other folks on my team that I want to work with on this particular project. So I'm going to add Adele, Alex, and Alan. All of these individuals can be editors, meaning they can create content as well. I'm actually going to mark Alex as an approver. This will allow Alex and potentially other individuals, if I set them up as such, to actually approve the communication before it gets sent out. At this point, we're actually going to set up the campaign. Given the fact that this is a pre-built template and already has 8 pieces of newsletters already in it, it can take a moment or two to set up. So we'll let it finish, and then we'll dive into the campaign. Okay, it looks like it's just about finished wrapping up creating the campaign. And Amplify will refresh here, and it's now taken me into the actual campaign page itself. So let me walk through a few initial items. As I scroll down, you'll see there's some publications that have already been built. Let me refresh this a little bit. Because this was a pre-built campaign, these are the 8 out-of-the-box scenarios that you can begin with. Again, these are just a starting point. You can modify these or delete these if you like. But as you can see, I've got 8 different drafts of some newsletters. In my case, I've scheduled these to be published on a weekly basis, talking about the rollout of Copilot. We're going to come back to that. Let me scroll back up and click on Overview again. In the top, you'll also see a number of templates. These are the out-of-the-box templates that come with Viva Amplify. There's obviously a blank template. There's a newsletter template, a template for events and status updates. If you click on View More Templates, you can see some additional examples down at the bottom. There's a training template or a recap template. If you want, you can create your own templates. I've already done that, and I'm going to show that to you in just a moment, but that allows you to create your own branding, maybe include your own images and logos and things like that. We're going to come back to that in a moment, but before we do that, I want to talk briefly about this item called a campaign brief. This is optional. You don't need to do it, but if you want to, you can create what we call a brief. There's a few different sections to a brief. One of those is the ability to set some campaign goals. So what I can establish here is the fact that I'd like to reach, for example, 50% of my audience in this particular campaign. This will be part of the reporting that we see towards the end. I'm going to scroll down just a bit further, and you'll see I have the ability to capture some campaign objectives. This is where I can author the sorts of things that I want to achieve in my campaign. In this example, I'm trying to drive some excitement and user engagement, provide some awareness and education about Viva Copilot, or rather about Microsoft Copilot and so forth. And then below that, I've also captured some key messages. These are the things that I want to remind my communicators of as they're creating the content. They can refer back to this information to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page. And you'll see that in a few moments when we actually start creating the newsletter or the piece of communication, these will be at the fingertips of the communicators to always refer to. The other piece that you can create, kind of related to the campaign brief, is some links to some important documentation. So if I scroll to the bottom, you'll see a section down here called Resources. And what I'd like to do here is add some content that, again, my communicators will be able to draw upon as they're creating the information. So I've got some information just stored in my OneDrive folder. I've got a PowerPoint that includes some information about Copilot prompting. I've got, let's see, a PDF file that talks about the value of Copilot in an organization. And then I'm going to add one more link here, which is a FAQ document in a Microsoft Word format. And so now those are all available to my communicators as well. And again, you'll see those here in a few moments when I start to create the communication. Now, I've already created a similar version of this a moment ago that already has a template created. So I'm actually going to jump over to that particular campaign just to save me a little bit of time. It's this one here called Copilot Rollout. And as you can see, it has all of the same out-of-the-box pieces of communications as a starting point, but it also has a new template here that I created. This is, I've renamed it the Contoso Newsletter template. It's actually a copy and a modified version of the out-of-the-box template called Newsletter. And I also added some of my own images and logos. I made this sort of a space theme, for example. So this is the template that we're going to use for my newsletter example. So I'm going to go ahead and open that template. And I'm taken into our editing or authoring canvas. If you are familiar with authoring pages in SharePoint, this should look very familiar to you. This is effectively a SharePoint authoring page, and that's where we'll do the creation of our content. Before we begin, though, I do want to point out on the right-hand side, I have a link here for writing guidance. So this provides me all of that information that I just showed you, whether it be the key messages or the objectives, so that my my communicators have that information at their fingertips. They also have all of those resources that I linked just a moment ago at their disposal. But let's go ahead and create the content. So again, this is just a template. These are all just placeholders, text and images that I want to include, but I want to make a few changes here. So in this case, we're going to give this a new title, for example. I'm going to call this Welcome to Copilot. If I'd like, it's very easy to change images behind the scenes. I can select from a number of recent images maybe that I've worked with. There's a full set of stock images that are available in Amplify. These are not copyrighted, so you're free and welcome to use those. You can also just perform a search across the internet and provide content that way. If you have information that resides in maybe your OneDrive folders or SharePoint sites, you can also access those. And of course, you can upload or simply provide a link to any of that content. I'm happy with this image. I'm just going to leave that there. I'm going to scroll down and we're going to make a few edits on here. So this is a very rich editor. I'm going to change the title here. Obviously, I can, just like I would in any authoring canvas, change the look and feel. This is some placeholder text. So I've got some specific text that I want to put in here regarding Copilot. So it's just easy to highlight, cut and paste that information. It looks like I've indented it. So I'm going to move that back out to the left. So again, very easy to use, very fluid drag and drop designer. If I scroll down, I'll see I've added a few images here. Maybe I'm not happy with that. Maybe I want to change this from 3 columns to 2 columns. I'm actually just going to select this section, and then on the right-hand side, I'm going to alter that to a different look and feel. Okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe I don't want to use this image anymore. I'm just going to remove that. And maybe I decided that I'd like to add a video. So I can open up my web part selection tool. Again, if you're familiar with SharePoint, this should look very familiar. I can pull some videos out of Microsoft Stream, or maybe there's some content on a YouTube channel. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I've got a link here where I'm going to add a video, and this will populate here in just a moment for some Copilot information. Here we go. Okay, that looks good. Just going to scroll down just a little bit further. And by the way, I'm not going to go and edit all of this page, but I do want to point out one item here as well. We do provide Copilot, our generative AI solution, in Amplify as well. So let's say I've written this article and maybe I'm not that happy with the way it sounds. I have my Copilot icon available to me. I can ask Copilot to rewrite this content for me. It will actually provide me 3 different suggestions that I can flip through. If I'm not happy with it, I can still ask to adjust it, right? Maybe make it more casual or more professional in tone. Once I'm happy with that, I can replace it, and I'm off and running. I should also note that if you actually have the entire Viva suite, Copilot comes included with that within Viva. And so it's a great feature add for your communicators. So I think that's pretty good. Actually, one more thing I will show you. You can see down below I've got some additional content. We've added a great new feature in here called a design ideas, or a design assistant. What this will do is actually take a look at the section on the page that you're authoring and actually provide some very rich and robust improvements from design ideas. And so, for example, if I like this item, I can just select that and allow that page to be updated. And whoops, let me click on the right section there. There we go. So maybe I like this item here on the right. I can select that, and just like that, it makes those changes for me. So which is real helpful for a person like me who I'm not a particularly good visual designer. I can use the tool to help me do that. The last item I want to point out before we start publishing is something called an accessibility assistant. So Copilot can go through and review what you've built and actually highlight some things that might be you might want to address to provide better accessibility and inclusiveness. So for example, in my web part at the top that has a banner image, I'm missing an alt text, for example. Or maybe I have some difficult to read text based on the contrast and colors that I'm using. So that's a useful feature to make sure that everybody can read and consume your content effectively. Okay, at this point, we're actually going to start distributing and publishing the content. You'll notice on the right here, I have some options on where I want to publish this to. Right now, I've selected all 3 endpoints. I'm going to publish this out to email, to some SharePoint sites, and to some Teams channels. You'll see at the bottom down here, very, very soon, we'll be adding a 4th channel, which will be able to publish out to Viva engaged communities. But for now, we'll stick with these 3. And I'm going to click Next. That will save my content, and it will put it into a preview mode. This allows me to preview the content to understand what it will look like in each of these endpoints, as well as providing a few additional pieces of configuration. So in this case, I've selected Outlook, and I can scroll down and I can see what this is going to look like on an Outlook email. On the right-hand side, I need to configure a few pieces of additional information. I'm going to send this as myself, as Megan. In a real situation, you would probably send this from an alias, like your corporate communications team, or maybe send on behalf of your CEO, for example. And then you can also define where you want to send this to. So I'm selecting a few people here. Obviously, I probably wouldn't be sending this out to individuals. So you can select security groups and distribution groups and Microsoft 365 groups as well. So for example, I've defined some security groups like engineering or finance or HR. In this case, I'm going to select my sales and marketing team. This is a Microsoft 365 group because this is communication that I want them to see. Once I'm comfortable with that, I can click on SharePoint. And again, I can view what this is going to look like in a SharePoint environment. I just built it effectively in SharePoint, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. But I need to define where I want to publish it. I'm going to publish this out to a site called Contoso Life, but you can publish up to 10 different SharePoint sites. So maybe you want to put it here as well as maybe say your corporate intranet page. I'm just going to publish it to one location though. And then the third piece is Teams. So this is how it will appear in a Teams post. Here's a good example. Maybe in some endpoints I want to modify it slightly. So I can do that. I can simply hit customize. Maybe I don't think people have as much of an attention span maybe as I'm reading through some Teams channels, and I want to shorten some of this content up just a little bit. I'm going to remove a couple paragraphs there, and just so that we see this when I actually publish it, I'll change the color just a little bit so it stands out. And then I'm going to define where I want to publish this to. So at least in the case of Teams, I'm going to drop this into the general channel of our communications team. Okay, so once I'm happy with all of that, now I'm actually going to either publish it, schedule to publish it, or send it through an approval process. I can do that in the top right. The first thing I'll just show you is the ability to schedule when to publish this. The first thing it will do is actually provide me a quick summary, just reminding me of where I'm sending this to, Outlook, SharePoint, and Teams. And then it will give me a calendar and a time selection box. And this is important, particularly in a larger campaign where I might want to create multiple pieces of communication and queue them up to be published, for example, maybe every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. But in my example, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm first going to run it through an approval process. So if you remember, I had set up just one individual, Alex, as an individual to approve this. And so he appears in my pick list. And you can have multiple approvers if you want as well. I'm going to select Alex and click Next. And this is then going to send out the approval request to Alex. This can take a moment or two to schedule. So we'll see that in just a moment. Oh, and I forgot, before he actually receives the request, we also have an option to configure. Once the approval is done, do we then want to schedule it for a certain point in time? Do we want to manually publish it, or do we want to automatically publish it after the approval happens? I'm going to set this to manually publish. So I'll click Send, and now we're submitting the request to Alex. Okay, it looks like the approval has finished. I can see that request was sent, or sorry, it wasn't finished, but the approval was sent. I'm going to jump over to Alex. I'm in a new browser here, and I'm going to refresh this screen, and we should see there's the new Welcome to Copilot request that came in. Alex can simply select on that. He can see all the details that this is being published out to Outlook, SharePoint, and Teams. If he scrolls down, he can open in a browser the actual communication so that he can actually review it. He can see the status of the request. In this case, he's just going to make a comment that says it looks good. He could reassign the approval, he could reject it, but he's going to go ahead and approve this. And again, this will take just a moment to update. We'll jump back to Viva Amplify in just a moment and see the results of it. Okay, it looks like the approval finished. I can see now the status is in ready to publish. So at this point, we're actually going to publish this out to the different locations. And if you remember, I set this up as manual publish. So I need to actually click the publish button. It's going to give me a summary of where this is going to go. And at this point, I will click publish, and it will begin sending out the emails to all of the different participants. It will create the newsletter for SharePoint and put that in the appropriate site pages in SharePoint, and it will create the content there for the Teams message post. This too can take a moment or so, so we'll let that finish and then we'll come back in just a moment. Okay, it looks like we have finished. You can see it's a status of sent, posted, and posted. So let's go ahead and take a look at the result of the publications. I'm going to begin here in SharePoint. This is the Contoso Life site that I published to. You can see there's already a couple of articles posted here. If I refresh this page, we should see our new article appearing. And sure enough, there it is. Now, every piece of communication is engaged with differently. So in the case of SharePoint, users can go into the news article, they can like the news article, they can add comments. All of those sorts of things are the items that we measure for engagement that you'll see in the reporting here in a moment. If I click on Teams, I publish this in the general channel of the communications team. And you'll notice here is my channel. If you also recall, this is the one where I customized. I made it a little bit shorter and I kind of highlighted it. So you can see it looks a little bit different than the one that I had published into SharePoint, which is exactly what we wanted. And then the third endpoint was to email. And sometimes this one takes just a little bit longer to appear, I've found. So we'll give it another minute or two. If we have some time, we'll come back to it. But we'll also see the email appear here for Megan and all of those users. But let's shift over and take a look at the reporting. I'm going to go back to my main campaign for this Copilot rollout. And I'm going to select the reporting tab. If you remember at the beginning, we had created the goal of 50%. And so I can start to see that here. Now, this particular campaign has had some other communications already published. And so I've fast forwarded just a little bit to show some levels of engagement. But you can see here, I've got a goal of just 25%. In fact, let me show you a different campaign that has a little bit more reporting in it. I'm going to choose, I'll choose this one here. I guess this is the one I was in. Let me double check I've got the right one. Okay, this will be fine. Yeah, so I can see the different goals. I can actually break that down. For example, what percentage is in Copilot or Teams or Outlook, so I can understand how different people are interacting with it. I get a visual representation across all those different endpoints, as well as a trending line over the past day or 7 days or 30 days. If I'm interested, I can put that into more of a channel breakdown. And I think what's really important is I can also see how people are engaging with it. These are what we call promotions or reactions. So recall also, depending on the endpoint, it varies. So in an email, you can forward the email or add reactions to it. In a Teams message, you can reply to the post. So depending on what it is, we capture different types of reactions. And that's all at the campaign level. I can also go down and look at the reporting within individual pieces of communication as well. So you'll notice there's one here on the right that I sent out a couple of weeks ago. I can actually hover over that and see a further breakdown to see that I've got different unique viewers and promotions and comments across all of these different channels. And if I wanted to drill into that particular communication, I could scroll down to the bottom and I could get a more detailed breakdown of that information. Furthermore, this is optional, but if you wanted to import or load some additional data in from your environment, maybe from Active Directory or HR system, you could include additional data attributes to further refine the reporting. So for example, maybe I want to view this by audience or levels within the organization or locations. And that can be useful to understand how people are engaging with it. So you might want to understand, are people in my New York office engaging with my communication through email more frequently than compared folks in the Los Angeles office who tend to enjoy reading this in SharePoint pages. So you can really do quite a bit of reporting scenarios here depending on the different attributes you want to load in. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Hopefully you found this useful about Viva Amplify. Have a good day. Bye-bye.